The sun rose over the vast expanse of Alex's farmland, painting the horizon with strokes of orange and pink. Alex stood on the porch of the modest farmhouse, sipping a steaming mug of coffee as the rooster's crow echoed in the distance. This was the life they had chosen, a life rooted in the land their family had cultivated for generations. The field stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with patches of golden wheat, rows of vibrant corn, and clusters of fruit trees swaying gently in the morning breeze. For Alex, the farm was more than a livelihood. It was a legacy. Their grandparents had tilled the soil with their bare hands. Their parents had expanded the farmstead. And now it was Alex's turn to care for it, nurture it, and protect it. Every blade of grass, every furrowed row, told a story of hard work, resilience, and hope. As the sun climbed higher, Alex got to work. Morning chores were a familiar rhythm, a kind of meditation that began with feeding the animals. Chickens clucked around Alex's boots as they scattered feed, their pecking accompanied by the soft lowing of cows from the nearby barn. Daisy, the family's oldest cow, nudged Alex's shoulder as if to remind them not to forget her favorite treat, a handful of fresh clover. Alex chuckled, patting her on the neck before moving on to check the water troughs. The barn was alive with the sounds of livestock. The smell of hay mixed with the earthy scent of the animals as Alex moved between stalls, ensuring each creature was cared for. The morning light streamed through the wooden slats of the barn, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. It was moments like these that made the hard work worthwhile. The satisfaction of seeing the animals healthy and content, the crops flourishing under the open sky, was something that couldn't be measured in dollars or acres alone. After tending to the animals, Alex grabbed a toolbox and headed to the tractor. The old machine was a workhorse, reliable but temperamental. A slight sputter in the engine the previous day had hinted at trouble, and Alex wasn't one to let small issues become big problems. Crawling under the hood, they fiddled with bolts and checked connections, humming a tune their mother used to sing during planting season. "Morning, Alex," a cheerful voice called out, breaking the silence. Alex looked up to see their neighbor, Jim, waving from his truck parked at the edge of the property. "Morning, Jim," Alex called back, wiping their hands on a rag. Jim was a retired mechanic who lived just down the road and often stopped by to chat or lend a hand. "Need any help with that old beast?" Jim asked, nodding toward the tractor. "Not today," Alex replied with a grin. "But I might take you up on that next time." Jim chuckled, tipping his hat. "You know where to find me. Holler if you need anything." As Jim drove off, Alex felt a swell of gratitude for the tight-knit community that surrounded the farm. It wasn't just land that made a farm thrive. It was the people who pitched in, supported each other, and celebrated each other's successes. By mid-morning, Alex had moved onto the fields, walking the rows to check on the crops. The soil was rich and dark beneath their boots, a testament to years of careful stewardship. Kneeling down, Alex examined the corn stalks, noting the healthy green leaves and the tiny tassels beginning to form at the top. There was a sense of pride in watching the fruits of their labor take shape, a reminder of why they worked so hard every day. As Alex stood, the faint hum of machinery reached their ears, a sound that didn't belong. Turning toward the source, they spotted a line of trucks and construction vehicles parked at the edge of the property, just beyond the old wooden fence that marked the boundary between the farm and the new residential development. A flicker of unease passed through Alex, but they pushed it aside. It wasn't the first time they'd seen activity near the edge of the farmland. Developers had been building new houses for months, pushing ever closer to the farm, but so far, they hadn't crossed the line. Still, Alex made a mental note to keep an eye on the situation. The land was their responsibility, and they wouldn't let anyone take that away. As the day wore on, Alex continued their work, pausing occasionally to appreciate the small moments of beauty around them. A butterfly flitting between wildflowers, the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind, the soft clucking of a mother hen leading her chicks across the yard. These were the things that made the farm special, the things Alex was determined to protect. Little did they know, this peaceful morning would be one of the last they'd experience for a while. The morning started like any other. Alex was in the kitchen, pouring a second cup of coffee and scanning the weather forecast on their phone. A promising stretch of sunny days was predicted, perfect for the late-season planting they had planned for the south field. It was the kind of day that made the hard work of farming feel lighter, almost joyful. The first sign of trouble was subtle, a faint rumble in the distance, like distant thunder. At first, Alex dismissed it as a truck on the main road or some nearby construction activity. It wasn't unusual to hear such noises, given the ever-expanding housing development that had crept closer to the farm over the years. But as the rumbling grew louder, Alex's curiosity turned into concern. Setting the mug down on the counter, they moved to the front porch. The sound was unmistakable now, heavy machinery and lots of it. Peering out toward the eastern field, Alex's heart dropped. A convoy of bulldozers, dump trucks, and construction vehicles was lined up along the property line, and one of the bulldozers was already rolling onto the field. Alex stood frozen for a moment, unable to process what they were seeing. Then, as if spurred by an invisible force, they bolted off the porch, grabbing their hat and boots on the way out. By the time Alex reached the field, the bulldozer had already plowed through the first few rows of corn. The once orderly rows were now a chaotic mess of dirt, crushed stalks, and machinery tracks. A wave of anger surged through Alex, and they sprinted toward the bulldozer, waving their arms and shouting, "Hey, stop! What the hell are you doing?" The driver, a man in his early 40s wearing a reflective vest and a hard hat, glanced down at Alex, but didn't stop. He gestured toward a clipboard mounted on the dashboard of the bulldozer, as if that was explanation enough. Alex didn't care about clipboards or paperwork at that moment. They ran ahead, planting themselves in the bulldozer's path and forcing the driver to hit the brakes. The massive machine groaned to a halt, its engine idling loudly as Alex glared up at the driver. "Turn that thing off," Alex demanded. "You're tearing up my field." The driver leaned out of the cab, looking annoyed. "Got orders from the HOA. They said this land was cleared for development." Alex's eyes widened. "The HOA? They have no authority over my property." The driver shrugged, his indifference infuriating. "Look, I'm just following instructions. Take it up with them." He pointed toward a white SUV parked at the edge of the field, where a woman in a tailored suit and oversized sunglasses stood observing the scene with an air of smug satisfaction. Alex didn't need an introduction to know who she was. Karen, the chairwoman of the HOA, had made her presence known the moment she took the position, issuing rules and mandates that bordered on absurdity. Alex had mostly ignored her antics, until now. Fuming, Alex stormed toward the SUV, boots kicking up dirt with every step. Karen didn't move, watching Alex approach as though they were an annoying fly she might swat away at any moment. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Alex demanded, stopping just short of Karen. Karen took off her sunglasses slowly, as if the act itself were some grand performance. "Good morning to you too," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I assume you're here to discuss the new community center." "Community center?" Alex's voice rose. "This is my farmland, Karen. You have no right to be here, let alone to bulldoze it." Karen sighed dramatically, as though she were dealing with a petulant child. "Oh, Alex, you really should keep up with the HOA newsletters. This land was declared part of the Community Improvement Project last month. It's going to be such a wonderful addition to the neighborhood, a gathering place for families, maybe even a playground. Doesn't that sound nice?" Alex felt their fists clench at their sides. "You can't just declare my land part of your project. This is private property." Karen waved a perfectly manicured hand dismissively. "It's all legal. The HOA has the authority to repurpose underutilized land for the greater good." "Underutilized?" Alex's voice was nearly a shout now. "This is my livelihood. I've been farming this land for years. It's not underutilized. It's my family's heritage." Karen's expression hardened, the thin veneer of civility slipping. "Well, maybe you should have considered that before leaving it so unsightly. Do you know how many complaints I've received about the view from the new subdivision? All that dirt and old machinery. It's just not aesthetically pleasing." Alex could hardly believe what they were hearing. "Complaints? From people who moved in after my farm was here? That's rich." Karen tilted her head, her smile returning, but with a sharp edge. "Look, Alex, this is happening. You can make it easy on yourself or difficult. Either way, the community comes first. Before Alex could respond, the sound of another bulldozer starting up made them spin around. Another machine had rolled into the field, its massive blade aimed at the remaining crops. Panic surged in Alex's chest. "This isn't over." Alex spat at Karen before turning and running back toward the field. They waved their arms at the second driver, shouting for them to stop. This time, the driver hesitated, glancing toward Karen for direction. Karen simply nodded, and the driver resumed their work. Alex felt a mix of fury and helplessness as they stood in the middle of their field, watching the machines destroy what had taken years to grow. They knew they couldn't stop this on their own, but one thing was certain. Karen and her HOA had made a powerful enemy. The air was thick with tension as Alex stood outside the community center where the HOA held its monthly meetings. The building was a far cry from the modest farmhouse Alex called home, with its polished glass doors and manicured flower beds. The facade seemed to symbolize everything Alex detested about the encroaching development. All surface-level beauty, with no regard for the deeper roots it threatened to destroy. Inside, the meeting room buzzed with conversation as residents mingled, sipping coffee from disposable cups and nibbling on store-bought cookies. The atmosphere felt almost celebratory, which only added fuel to Alex's simmering anger. How could they celebrate while their farmland, their livelihood, was being torn apart? At the front of the room stood Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, chatting animatedly with a small group of supporters. She was dressed impeccably, as always, in a tailored blazer and heels that clicked sharply against the tile floor. Her laugh carried across the room, grating on Alex's nerves. Karen looked every bit the picture of control and authority, and Alex knew that challenging her here wouldn't be easy. But they had no choice. Taking a deep breath, Alex marched to the sign-in table. The volunteer behind the table, a middle-aged man with a sheepish smile, seemed to recognize them and hesitated. "Name?" he asked cautiously. "Alex Carter," Alex said firmly. "I'm here to speak." The man nodded, scribbling the name on the sign-in sheet. "You're on the agenda under public comments?" "Good," Alex replied, their voice sharp enough to make the man flinch. They turned and found a seat near the back, their eyes fixed on Karen as the room gradually quieted and the meeting began. Karen called the meeting to order with a dramatic flourish, tapping her manicured nails against a podium as she welcomed everyone. She spoke with the practiced tone of someone who had long been accustomed to commanding attention, weaving words like progress, community, and shared vision into her opening remarks. Alex could feel their blood boiling with every sentence. Karen was a master at making even the most underhanded schemes sound like benevolent acts of charity. When she began talking about the exciting new plans for the community center, Alex had to grip the edge of their chair to keep from standing up and shouting. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Karen opened the floor for public comments. Alex's hand shot up before she even finished her sentence. Karen's eyes flicked toward them, and for a moment her polished smile faltered. But she recovered quickly, gesturing toward Alex with a saccharine sweetness that only made their anger burn brighter. "Ah, Alex," Karen said, her voice dripping with faux warmth. "Always a pleasure to hear from one of our more passionate community members. Please take the floor." Alex rose, their heart pounding, but their resolve unshaken. As they walked to the front of the room, the whispers started, a ripple of murmurs and sideways glances from the assembled residents. Some looked curious, others disapproving. Alex ignored them all, focusing only on Karen, who watched them with the serene confidence of someone who believed they were untouchable. Taking a deep breath, Alex began. "I'm here to talk about the blatant and illegal destruction of my farmland by the HOA." The room fell silent. Karen's smile tightened, and Alex saw the faintest flicker of irritation cross her face. "This farmland," Alex continued, gesturing toward the window as if the fields were visible just beyond, "has been in my family for generations. It's not just a piece of property, it's my livelihood, it's my history, and it's my legal right to protect it from people like you." A murmur spread through the room, and Karen raised a hand to silence it. "Alex," she said, her tone condescending, "I understand your concerns, but I assure you, everything the HOA has done is well within our authority. The land was deemed underutilized and underutilized? Alex interrupted, their voice rising. That land was actively being farmed. Your so-called authority doesn't give you the right to bulldoze private property without my consent. What you've done is trespassing. It's vandalism, and I'm not going to stand for it. Karen's smile disappeared entirely, replaced by a thin-lipped look of annoyance. As I've explained, the HOA has a duty to act in the best interest of the community. The community center will provide a valuable space for families, children, and, spare me the speech, Alex snapped. This isn't about the community. It's about control. You don't like the way my farm looks, so you decided to take matters into your own hands. But you've overstepped, and I'll make sure everyone knows it. The tension in the room was palpable. Some residents shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others exchanged whispers. One man in the front row cleared his throat and raised his hand. Karen, eager to deflect, turned to him with a grateful nod. "Yes, Bill," she said, her tone suddenly sunny. "Well," Bill began, glancing nervously at Alex, I think the community center sounds like a great idea. And, maybe we could find a way to, compensate Alex for the inconvenience." "Inconvenience?" Alex repeated incredulously. "You think destroying my crops and tearing up my land is just an inconvenience?" Karen seized the moment. "Alex, we understand this has been difficult for you," she said, her voice oozing false sympathy. "But the HOA is here to serve the greater good. I'm sure we can come to a reasonable agreement." Alex took a step closer to the podium, their voice cutting through the room like a knife. "The only reasonable agreement is for you to stop this illegal project, repair the damage you've done, and stay off my property. Anything less, and I'll see you in court." The room erupted into chaos. Residents began talking over one another, some defending Alex, others siding with Karen. Karen tried to restore order, banging a gavel against the podium, but the noise drowned her out. Alex didn't wait to hear the rest. Turning on their heel, they strode out of the room, their anger propelling them forward. They didn't need the HOA's approval. They needed a plan, and they weren't going to let Karen win. The warm afternoon sun did little to soothe Alex's simmering anger as they sat at the kitchen table, papers and documents spread out in a chaotic mess. The farm's deed, zoning maps, and copies of correspondence with the county offices lay scattered, a testament to the growing storm brewing in Alex's life. Each document was a puzzle piece, and Alex was determined to put them together to prove what they already knew. Karen and her HOA were acting far beyond their authority. The events of the HOA meeting replayed in Alex's mind like a bad movie. Karen's smug smile, her condescending tone, the way she dismissed the destruction of the farmland as a mere inconvenience. Alex gritted their teeth, pushing the memory aside. There wasn't time for anger. Not now. They needed answers. Alex reached for their laptop and began searching online for any information about the HOA's legal limits. After an hour of digging, one thing became clear. Karen's claim that the HOA could seize farmland for community projects was, at best, a gross misinterpretation of the law. At worst, it was a blatant lie. Alex jotted down notes furiously, determined to arm themselves with as much knowledge as possible. The sound of tires crunching on gravel broke their focus. Alex glanced out the window to see a dusty red pickup pulling into the driveway. Relief flooded their chest as they recognized the driver. Taylor, a close friend and a lawyer with a reputation for being sharp as a tack and relentless in the courtroom. Alex had called Taylor earlier, barely able to contain their frustration as they explained the situation. Taylor climbed out of the truck, dressed casually in jeans and a button-down shirt, but carrying a leather briefcase that hinted at their profession. They strode up to the porch with purpose, their expression serious but supportive. "Alex," Taylor greeted, stepping inside. "I came as soon as I could. What's going on?" Alex gestured to the table, frustration evident in their voice. "This," they said, pointing to the mess of papers. "Karen and her HOA bulldozed part of my field, and they're claiming they had the authority to do it. I need your help." Taylor sat down, their lawyer instincts kicking in immediately. They began sorting through the documents, their eyes scanning each page with practiced precision. "Okay," Taylor said after a moment. "Let's start with the basics. Do you have a copy of the farm's deed?" "Right here," Alex said, sliding the document across the table. Taylor examined it closely, nodding. "This clearly shows the property belongs to you." "And the zoning map?" Alex handed over another sheet. "It's zoned for agricultural use. Always has been." Taylor studied the map, their brow furrowing. "Then Karen's claim doesn't hold water. The HOA has no jurisdiction over private agricultural land. The only way they could justify this is if they had a legal easement or some kind of court order. And from what I'm seeing here, they don't." "That's what I thought," Alex said, their voice tight with anger. "But she's acting like she has all the power in the world." Taylor leaned back in their chair, tapping a pen against the table. "This isn't the first time I've heard of an HOA overstepping its boundaries, but this is particularly egregious. The next step is to figure out how Karen's justifying this. If she's forged documents, bribed officials, or manipulated zoning laws, we'll find it." Alex nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time in days. "Where do we start?" Taylor grinned. "We start with the county records office." The records office was a drab, windowless building that smelled faintly of dust and old paper. Alex and Taylor stepped inside, greeted by the low hum of fluorescent lights and the muffled chatter of clerks. Taylor approached the counter confidently, flashing their lawyer's ID. "We're here to review property records and zoning permits for the Carter farm," Taylor said. The clerk, a young woman with glasses and a harried expression, nodded and disappeared into the back. After a few minutes, she returned with a stack of files and placed them on the counter. "Everything we have on the Carter farm is in here," she said. "Let me know if you need anything else." Taylor thanked her and carried the files to a nearby table. Alex followed, their heart pounding as Taylor opened the first file. They sifted through the pages, scanning for anything unusual. Minutes stretched into an hour as they worked in silence, the tension thick in the air. Then Taylor froze. "Alex," they said, their tone sharp. "Look at this." Alex leaned over, their eyes falling on a document titled Zoning Amendment Proposal. It was dated 2 months prior and bore the signature of a county official. The amendment reclassified part of the farmland as mixed use, opening it up for development. "What the hell is this?" Alex demanded. "I never sign off on any zoning changes." Taylor's eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't have had to. If the HOA lobbied for this and got a corrupt official to push it through, they could have done it without your knowledge. But look at this signature." Taylor pointed to the bottom of the page. "It's Karen's." Alex's stomach churned. "You're saying she's the one who filed for this change?" "Exactly," Taylor said. "And it looks like she fast-tracked it, probably by greasing a few palms." Alex clenched their fists. "So she's not just overstepping her authority. She's breaking the law." Taylor nodded. "And we're going to prove it. But first, we need more evidence." They spent the rest of the afternoon combing through the files, uncovering more pieces of the puzzle. Payments from the HOA to the county's zoning board, emails between Karen and local officials, and even a blueprint for the so-called community center. All of it pointed to a carefully orchestrated scheme. By the time they left the records office, Alex felt a renewed sense of determination. Karen might have thought she could bulldoze her way to victory, but she'd underestimated her opponent. With Taylor's help, Alex was ready to fight back. And this time, they wouldn't stop until justice was served. The morning after their visit to the county records office, Alex woke up with a renewed sense of determination. The discovery of Karen's fingerprints all over the zoning amendment proposal and the shady dealings with local officials had given them the momentum they needed. But Karen wasn't going to back down easily, and Alex knew they had to prepare for a long battle. As Alex sipped their coffee on the front porch, the faint roar of engines reached their ears again. Their stomach twisted. The sound of machinery had become a haunting reminder of the destruction wrought by Karen and her cronies. Placing the mug down with a sharp clink, Alex grabbed their phone and headed toward the eastern field to investigate. When they arrived, Alex was met with a sight that sent a fresh wave of anger coursing through them. A group of workers was unloading construction materials, piles of lumber, concrete slabs, and steel beams, onto the corner of the field that had already been bulldozed. Standing nearby, clipboard in hand, was Karen. She wore a pristine white blouse and sunglasses that reflected the harsh morning sun, her demeanor as smug as ever. "Karen," Alex bellowed, striding across the uneven ground. The workers glanced up but quickly looked away, clearly not wanting to get involved. Karen turned at the sound of Alex's voice, her smile widening. "Ah, Alex, what a pleasant surprise. I was just overseeing the progress. Isn't it exciting? This space is going to be such a wonderful asset to the community." Alex stopped a few feet away, fists clenched at their sides. "You have no right to be here. You know this is my land." Karen tilted her head, her expression feigning innocence. "Oh, Alex, I thought we already discussed this. The zoning change is perfectly legal, and the HOA has full authority to proceed." Alex stepped closer, their voice firm. "We both know that's a lie, Karen. I've seen the paperwork. I know about the bribes and your backdoor deals with the zoning board." Karen's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but she quickly recovered, crossing her arms over her chest. "I have no idea what you're talking about. Everything we've done is above board. If you have any complaints, I suggest you take it up with the HOA's legal counsel." Alex took a deep breath, trying to keep their temper in check. "Oh, don't worry, Karen. I will. But you should know this. I'm not backing down. You're not just fighting me. You're fighting every farmer, every landowner, and every person who's sick of bullies like you thinking they can take whatever they want." Karen's expression hardened, the false cheer in her voice replaced by a sharp edge. "Is that so? Well, Alex, I'd think carefully before making threats. The HOA has deep pockets and plenty of support. Can you say the same?" Before Alex could respond, the rumble of tires on gravel caught their attention. They turned to see a line of trucks pulling into the field. At first, Alex thought it was more construction vehicles, but as the trucks came closer, they realized it was a caravan of local farmers and neighbors. Jim, Alex's mechanic friend, was leading the charge in his old pickup, followed by a mix of familiar and unfamiliar faces. The sight filled Alex with a surge of hope. These were people who understood the value of land, of hard work, of standing together against injustice. As the trucks parked and people climbed out, Karen's confident facade began to crack. "What's going on here?" Karen demanded, her voice rising. Jim stepped forward, a determined look on his face. "We heard what you've been up to, Karen," he said, his voice carrying over the murmurs of the growing crowd. "You might have the HOA in your pocket, but you don't have the whole town. We're here to support Alex and make sure you don't get away with this." Karen's eyes darted from face to face, her composure slipping. "This is private property," she snapped. "You're trespassing." Jim chuckled darkly. "Funny, coming from someone who bulldozed someone else's land." A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd, and Karen's cheeks flushed. She turned to the workers, barking orders to continue unloading the materials. "Ignore them," she said. "They're just trying to cause trouble." But the workers hesitated, glancing nervously at the crowd. It was clear they weren't eager to get caught in the middle of a standoff. Sensing an opportunity, Alex stepped forward and addressed the workers directly. "You don't have to do this," they said, their voice steady but firm. "Karen doesn't care about you. She's using you to cover up her illegal actions. If you walk away now, no one here will hold it against you." The workers exchanged uncertain looks. One of them, a young man with a hard hat tucked under his arm, finally spoke up. "I don't want any trouble. I'm just here for the paycheck." Alex nodded. "I get it. But think about whether it's worth it to work for someone who doesn't respect the law or the people whose lives she's destroying." The young man hesitated, then muttered something to his co-workers. One by one, they began climbing into their trucks, leaving the materials where they lay. Karen watched in stunned silence as her workforce abandoned her. "This isn't over," Karen hissed, turning back to Alex. "You'll regret this." Alex met her glare with a calm determination. "I don't think so, Karen. The truth is coming out, and you're going to regret ever setting foot on my land." As Karen stormed off, the crowd erupted into cheers. Alex felt a wave of gratitude as neighbors clapped them on the back, offering words of encouragement and promises of support. It wasn't over yet, not by a long shot, but for the first time, Alex felt like they weren't fighting alone. With their community behind them and Taylor working tirelessly on the legal front, they were ready to face whatever came next. As the days passed, the town seemed to split into two distinct camps. Those who sided with Alex and believed the farm was a vital part of the community's history and economy, and those who supported Karen's vision of a new, modernized neighborhood complete with a community center, upscale parks, and high-end amenities. The tension was palpable. Conversations at the diner turned heated, and neighbors who had once exchanged friendly waves now crossed the street to avoid each other. Alex felt the weight of the division every time they stepped into town. The whispers and sidelong glances were hard to ignore, but they refused to let it deter them. There were bigger battles to fight. On the farm, the damage done by the bulldozers was a constant reminder of what was at stake. The field that Karen's crew had torn up was now a barren patch of dirt, its rich soil churned and compacted by heavy machinery. Every time Alex looked at it, a mix of anger and determination surged through them. They had to win this fight, not just for themselves, but for the land, for their family's legacy, and for every farmer who could face a similar threat. Taylor had been working tirelessly behind the scenes, building a case that would expose Karen's corruption and bring her plans to a screeching halt. The evidence they'd gathered at the county records office was damning, but it needed to be airtight before they could present it. Meanwhile, Alex focused on rallying support from the community, reaching out to neighbors, local farmers, and even sympathetic business owners. One afternoon, Alex drove into town to meet with a group of local farmers at the co-op. The room was filled with familiar faces, men and women who had spent their lives working the land, their hands calloused and their backs bent from years of labor. Alex felt a pang of gratitude as they stepped to the front of the room, knowing these were people who understood the value of what they were fighting for. "Thank you all for coming," Alex began, their voice steady despite the nerves bubbling under the surface. "You've all heard what's happening with the farm. Karen and the HOA are trying to take what doesn't belong to them, and they're using every dirty trick in the book to make it happen." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. One of the older farmers, a man named Earl, raised his hand. "What can we do to help?" he asked. "We're not lawyers, but we know what it means to fight for our land." Alex smiled, the support giving them strength. "We need to show Karen and the HOA that they're not just fighting me, they're fighting all of us. We need to make our voices heard. Write letters to the local paper, show up at town hall meetings, talk to your neighbors. And if they come for your land next, don't let them intimidate you." Earl nodded, his weathered face set with determination. "You've got our support, Alex. Whatever you need, just say the word." As the meeting broke up, Alex felt a renewed sense of hope. The farmers weren't just allies. They were a force to be reckoned with. Karen might have the backing of the HOA and a few corrupt officials, but Alex had something far more powerful, a community that understood the importance of standing together. But Karen wasn't going to let that unity go unchallenged. The next morning, Alex woke to find flyers scattered across their property. The papers fluttered in the breeze, caught in the fence posts and the branches of the apple trees. Alex picked one up, their jaw tightening as they read the bold, accusatory headline. "Why the farm is holding the community back." The flyer was filled with Karen's rhetoric, claiming that the farm was an eyesore, a wasted opportunity that could be transformed into something beneficial for everyone. It painted Alex as stubborn and selfish, someone clinging to outdated traditions at the expense of progress. There were even doctored photos showing the farm looking neglected and unkempt, a far cry from the vibrant, thriving fields Alex had worked so hard to maintain. Anger boiled in Alex's chest, but they took a deep breath, refusing to let Karen's tactics shake them. Instead, they grabbed a stack of flyers and headed into town, determined to counter Karen's lies with the truth. At the diner, Alex handed a flyer to the owner, Mary, who had always been a strong supporter of the farm. Mary read it with a frown, shaking her head. "That woman has some nerve," she said, crumpling the flyer in her hand. "Don't worry, Alex. People around here know the truth. Karen can't fool everyone." Still, the flyers did their damage. Over the next few days, Alex noticed more and more people avoiding eye contact or whispering behind their back. It was clear that Karen's smear campaign had made some residents question their loyalty to the farm. But Alex refused to back down. Meanwhile, Taylor had uncovered more evidence of Karen's corruption, including emails that revealed her attempts to bribe local officials into fast-tracking the zoning changes. Taylor also discovered that Karen stood to make a significant profit from the development, far more than she had let on. It was a smoking gun, and Taylor was determined to use it. "She's been padding her pockets this whole time," Taylor said one evening as they and Alex reviewed the latest findings. "We need to get this out in the open. If the town sees what she's really after, they'll turn on her." Alex nodded, their resolve firm. "Let's do it." The next morning, Alex and Taylor sent the evidence to the local newspaper, along with a detailed account of Karen's illegal actions. They also shared it with local activists and community leaders, ensuring that the information would spread far and wide. Within hours, the story broke. The headline on the front page of the town's newspaper read, "HOA chairwoman exposed. Corruption, bribery, and greed." The article detailed Karen's shady dealings, from the forged zoning amendments to the backdoor agreements with developers. It painted a damning picture of a woman who cared more about her own profits than the well-being of the community. The fallout was immediate. Town residents flooded social media with outrage, demanding that Karen step down from her position. Even some of her staunchest supporters began to distance themselves, realizing they had been used as pawns in her scheme. As Alex watched the tide begin to turn, they felt a sense of vindication. Karen had underestimated them, thinking she could bully and intimidate her way to victory. But Alex had something far stronger: truth, justice, and a community that refused to let her win. As the scandal broke and Karen's reputation began to crumble, Alex thought the worst might be over. The truth was out, the community was rallying, and Karen was losing her grip on power. But Karen wasn't the type to admit defeat gracefully. If anything, she became more dangerous, her desperation driving her to escalate her attacks in ways Alex hadn't anticipated. It started subtly, with mysterious delays and interruptions to Alex's daily routines. A shipment of fertilizer Alex had ordered weeks ago suddenly went missing. When Alex called the supplier, they claimed the delivery had been canceled by someone posing as Alex. A few days later, a repair crew that had been scheduled to fix the irrigation system failed to show up, citing a last-minute change of plans. At first, Alex thought these were coincidences, annoying but manageable. But then the sabotage became more overt. One morning, as Alex walked out to check on the tractors, they froze in shock. The equipment had been vandalized, their tires slashed and engines tampered with. Spray painted across the barn door in bold red letters were the words, "You're next." Alex's stomach churned, a mix of fear and fury. They snapped a photo of the graffiti and immediately called Taylor. "This has gone too far," Alex said, their voice trembling. "She's trying to scare me off." Taylor's voice was calm but firm. "This is intimidation, plain and simple. We'll report it to the sheriff. The more evidence we have against her, the stronger our case will be." Alex nodded, taking a deep breath to steady themselves. They couldn't afford to back down now, not when they were so close to exposing Karen's schemes once and for all. Later that day, Alex drove into town to file a police report. The sheriff, a gruff but fair man named Davis, listened carefully as Alex explained the situation. He took notes, nodding occasionally. "This isn't the first complaint I've heard about Karen," Davis said, leaning back in his chair. "But vandalism? That's a whole new level. We'll investigate, but you should be careful. People like her get dangerous when they feel cornered." Alex thanked him and left the station, feeling a mix of relief and unease. Knowing the authorities were involved helped, but it didn't erase the fear that Karen might escalate further. That night, as Alex sat at the kitchen table, Taylor arrived with updates. They had been digging deeper into Karen's connections and uncovered more incriminating evidence. This time, records of Karen using HOA funds to pay off developers who had promised her a cut of the profits from the new community center. The sheer audacity of her actions was staggering. "She's been using HOA money as her personal piggy bank," Taylor said, spreading the documents across the table. "If we can tie this to her sabotage of your farm, we'll have a rock-solid case." Alex's determination flared. "Let's make sure everyone knows exactly who they're dealing with." The next day, Alex and Taylor held a community meeting at the local town hall. Word had spread quickly about the vandalism and Karen's misuse of HOA funds, and the room was packed with residents eager to hear the latest developments. Alex stood at the front, their voice steady but passionate as they addressed the crowd. Karen has tried to intimidate me, spread lies about my farm, and even destroy my property, Alex began. But this isn't just about me. It's about all of us, about protecting our community from someone who thinks they're above the law. Taylor stepped forward, presenting the documents they had uncovered. The crowd murmured in outrage as Taylor detailed Karen's illegal actions, from the forged zoning amendments to the embezzlement of HOA funds. By the time they finished, the room was buzzing with anger and determination. "What can we do?" a woman in the back called out. "Hold her accountable," Alex said. "Write letters, show up to HOA meetings, demand that she step down. And if she doesn't, we'll take her to court." The crowd erupted in applause, their support filling Alex with renewed strength. Karen had underestimated them, thinking she could bully them into submission. But the community was stronger than she realized, and they weren't going to let her win. As the meeting broke up, Alex felt a hand on their shoulder. They turned to see Jim, the mechanic, grinning at them. "You've got guts, Alex," he said. "We're all behind you." "Thanks, Jim," Alex said, their voice filled with gratitude. "That means a lot." But even as the community rallied, Karen wasn't done. The next morning, Alex woke to find a notice pinned to their front door. It was an official-looking letter from the HOA, claiming that Alex was in violation of multiple neighborhood ordinances and threatening hefty fines if they didn't comply. Alex snorted in disbelief. Neighborhood ordinances? On a farm? Taylor arrived shortly after, taking one look at the letter and shaking their head. "She's grasping at straws. This won't hold up in court." "Maybe not," Alex said, crumpling the letter. "But it's clear she's not giving up." As the days turned into weeks, Karen's tactics grew increasingly desperate. She filed frivolous complaints against Alex, spread rumors about their financial stability, and even tried to discredit Taylor by digging into their legal history. But every move Karen made only strengthened the community's resolve to stand against her. The final straw came when Karen attempted to organize a rally of her own, hoping to drum up support for the community center. But when the day arrived, only a handful of people showed up. Meanwhile, across town, Alex and their supporters held a counter-rally that drew hundreds. Karen watched from a distance, her face pale and her posture stiff. For the first time, she looked truly defeated. But Alex knew better than to celebrate just yet. Karen wasn't finished. Not until she was forced to step down or face the full weight of the law. And Alex was determined to see it through, no matter what it took. The turning point arrived on a brisk morning when Alex and Taylor received a call from Sheriff Davis. He had been reviewing the evidence they'd submitted, including the vandalism report and the records of Karen's embezzlement, and his tone suggested a breakthrough. "We've got enough to start an official investigation," Davis said. "But we'll need you to testify and share everything you've got." Alex didn't hesitate. "I'll do whatever it takes." Taylor arranged for a formal meeting with Davis and the town council. The council, while traditionally deferential to the HOA, had been under mounting pressure from the community to take action. The scandal that had unfolded in the local paper, coupled with Karen's increasingly erratic behavior, had left them with little choice but to investigate. The meeting was scheduled for the following week, and Alex and Taylor spent every waking hour preparing for it. Taylor meticulously organized the evidence. Financial records showing Karen's misuse of HOA funds, emails that revealed her bribery attempts, and photographs of the vandalism on Alex's property. They also collected testimonies from other residents who had experienced Karen's overreach, including a retired couple who had been fined for having non-compliant flowers in their garden, and a single mother who had been harassed about her children's toys being visible from the street. By the time the meeting day arrived, Alex felt both nervous and ready. The town council chambers were packed, every seat filled with concerned residents, farmers, and business owners. The tension in the air was palpable as Alex took their seat beside Taylor. At the front of the room, the council members sat in a row, their expressions serious. Karen was also present, seated at the opposite end of the room with her own lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit who looked as though he'd rather be anywhere else. When the council chairwoman, an older woman named Margaret, called the meeting to order, The room fell silent. Margaret's voice was calm, but firm as she explained the purpose of the hearing. "We're here to address allegations of misconduct by the HOA and its chairwoman, Karen Whitmore," she said. "This council takes these accusations seriously, and we intend to review all evidence presented today." Taylor was the first to speak, presenting the evidence with the confidence of someone who had spent years in the courtroom. They started with the financial records, walking the council through a detailed account of how Karen had funneled HOA funds into personal accounts and paid off developers. The room was silent as Taylor displayed the documents on a projector screen, each transaction highlighted in red. "Ms. Whitmore has not only violated the trust of this community," Taylor said, their voice steady, "but she has also committed acts that may constitute criminal embezzlement. These actions are not just unethical, they're illegal." Karen's lawyer attempted to object, claiming the evidence was circumstantial, but Taylor was quick to counter. "The records speak for themselves. These are not isolated incidents. They form a clear pattern of corruption." Next, Alex took the stand. Their heart pounded as they recounted the events of the past few weeks. The bulldozing of their farmland, the vandalism, the intimidation tactics. They spoke passionately about the importance of their farm and the devastating impact Karen's actions had had on their livelihood. "This isn't just about me," Alex said, their voice rising with emotion. "It's about the principle that no one, not even the HOA, is above the law. If we let this slide, what's to stop her from doing it to someone else? To all of us?" The crowd murmured in agreement, and Margaret raised her hand to silence them. "Thank you, Alex," she said. "Your testimony is duly noted." As the hearing continued, several other residents came forward to share their own stories of harassment and overreach by the HOA. A young couple described how Karen had threatened to fine them for having a trampoline in their backyard. An elderly man explained how she had pressured him to sell his home, claiming it was an eyesore. Each story painted a damning picture of an HOA run like a personal fiefdom, with Karen at the helm. When it was Karen's turn to speak, her lawyer took the lead, attempting to discredit the accusations. He argued that the zoning changes were necessary for the community's growth and claimed the financial discrepancies were clerical errors. But Karen's own testimony undermined her defense. Her tone was defensive and condescending, and her attempts to justify her actions only made her seem more guilty. "I've always acted in the best interest of the community," Karen insisted, her voice rising with indignation. "If some people can't see that, it's not my fault." The crowd reacted with murmurs of disbelief, and Margaret had to bang her gavel to restore order. As the hearing concluded, the council announced they would deliberate and issue a decision within 48 hours. The room buzzed with tension as people filed out, discussing what they had heard. Alex felt a mix of exhaustion and hope. They had done everything they could. It was now up to the council. 2 days later, the council issued its ruling. Margaret's voice was steady as she read the decision aloud at a press conference. After careful review of the evidence and testimony presented, this council finds that Karen Whitmore has violated the ethical and legal standards of her position as HOA chairwoman. Effective immediately, she is removed from her position, and all actions taken under her leadership are hereby suspended pending further investigation. Additionally, this council will refer the matter to the district attorney for possible criminal charges. The crowd erupted into cheers, and Alex felt a wave of relief wash over them. Karen, who was present at the press conference, looked pale and furious, her lawyer whispering urgently in her ear. But the community's message was clear. Her reign of terror was over. For Alex, it wasn't just a victory. It was a vindication of everything they had fought for. The farmland was safe, the truth was out, and the community had stood together against injustice. As Alex looked out over the cheering crowd, they felt a renewed sense of hope for the future. The battle had been hard fought, but in the end, justice had prevailed. The town was abuzz with the fallout from the council's decision. Karen's removal as HOA chairwoman and the pending criminal investigation had sent shockwaves through the community. For Alex, it was a moment of triumph. But the scars of the battle lingered. The damage to their farmland, the stress of the fight, and the division it had caused within the town wouldn't disappear overnight. The morning after the council's decision, Alex stood on their porch, gazing out at the fields. The eastern section of the farm, still marred by the destruction Karen's bulldozers had caused, stood as a painful reminder of how close they'd come to losing everything. But the rest of the farm was intact, a testament to their resilience and the support of the community. Taylor arrived shortly after, their truck kicking up a trail of dust as it pulled into the driveway. They stepped out, carrying a folder and a triumphant grin. "Morning, Alex," Taylor said, climbing the porch steps. "How's it feel to be the one who took down Karen Whitmore?" Alex chuckled, though their smile was tinged with exhaustion. "It feels good, but I'm ready for some normalcy again." Taylor nodded, handing over the folder. "This might help with that. It's the official paperwork confirming the suspension of all HOA actions on your property. They can't touch a single blade of grass without your consent." Alex opened the folder and scanned the documents. Relief washed over them as they read the legal jargon that boiled down to one simple truth: their land was safe. "Thank you, Taylor," Alex said sincerely. "I couldn't have done this without you." Taylor shrugged, smiling. "You gave me plenty to work with." Karen practically handed us the case on a silver platter. Despite the victory, there was still work to be done. The eastern field needed to be repaired and replanted, a task that would require time, effort, and money. Fortunately, the community had rallied around Alex in ways they hadn't anticipated. Throughout the day, neighbors stopped by to offer their help. Jim, the mechanic, arrived with his tractor and a team of volunteers. The local co-op donated seeds and fertilizer, and even Mary from the diner showed up with sandwiches and coffee for the workers. As the sun climbed higher, Alex worked alongside their neighbors, tilling the damaged soil and planting new crops. The rhythmic hum of machinery and the laughter of the volunteers created a sense of camaraderie that lifted Alex's spirits. For the first time in weeks, the farm felt alive again. At one point, Alex paused to survey the scene. Dozens of people, young and old, were scattered across the field, their hands dirty, but their faces smiling. It was a reminder of the strength of community, the power of people coming together to support one another. "That's quite the sight, isn't it?" Jim said, pulling up beside Alex on his tractor. Alex nodded, their chests swelling with gratitude. "It really is. I didn't think so many people would show up." Jim grinned. "Karen underestimated you, Alex. She underestimated all of us. This town doesn't take kindly to bullies." By the end of the day, the eastern field was well on its way to recovery. The rows of freshly planted crops stood as a symbol of resilience, a testament to what the community could accomplish when it stood together. As the volunteers packed up and headed home, Alex stood in the field, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. That evening, Taylor joined Alex on the porch, both of them nursing cups of coffee. The air was cool, carrying the scent of freshly tilled earth. "So," Taylor said, breaking the silence, "what's next for you?" Alex thought for a moment, staring out at the fields. "I think I'll keep doing what I've always done. Farming, taking care of this land. It's what I'm meant to do." Taylor nodded. "And Karen? You think she'll try to come back?" Alex shook their head. "I don't think she'll have a chance. With the investigation and everything that's come out, her reputation is ruined. She'll be too busy dealing with the consequences of her actions to bother with me." Taylor smiled. "Well, if she does, you know where to find me." As the night settled over the farm, Alex felt a deep sense of peace. The fight had been long and grueling, but it had been worth it. They had stood their ground, defended their land, and reminded the town of the importance of community and justice. And though there were still challenges ahead, Alex knew they wouldn't face them alone. The farm was more than just a piece of land. It was a legacy, a symbol of perseverance. And now, it stood stronger than ever, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, the truth would prevail and justice would win. The weeks following the town council's decision brought a whirlwind of activity to Alex's life. The farm, once under threat, was now bustling with renewed energy. Word of the victory had spread beyond the town, and Alex received calls and visits from reporters, neighboring farmers, and even environmental advocates who wanted to learn more about the fight to save the land. Though the attention was overwhelming at times, Alex welcomed the opportunity to tell their story. It wasn't just about the farm. It was about standing up against corruption and the importance of protecting land that had been nurtured for generations. One morning, as Alex worked in the barn, cleaning and organizing tools, a familiar voice called out from the driveway. "Alex, got a minute?" Alex turned to see Jim approaching, carrying a clipboard and wearing his usual friendly grin. Behind him was a group of other neighbors, many of whom had helped with the field restoration. "What's going on?" Alex asked, stepping outside to greet them. Jim handed over the clipboard, his grin widening. "We've been talking, and we think it's time to take the next step." Alex raised an eyebrow, scanning the document. It was a petition to create a farmland preservation ordinance, a local law that would protect agricultural land from being repurposed without the explicit consent of the landowner and the community. "After what Karen pulled, none of us want to see something like this happen again," Jim explained. "This town's roots are in farming, and we need to make sure it stays that way." Alex felt a lump rise in their throat. This is incredible. I don't even know what to say." "Say you'll help us make it happen," Jim said. "We're counting on you." Alex nodded, their chests swelling with pride. "You've got it. Let's do this." Over the next several weeks, Alex threw themselves into the effort to pass the ordinance. They attended town hall meetings, spoke at local schools, and worked with Taylor to draft language that would ensure the ordinance was both strong and fair. The community response was overwhelmingly positive. Farmers, shop owners, and even residents from the new housing developments signed the petition, eager to show their support for preserving the town's agricultural heritage. But not everyone was on board. A small group of developers, likely influenced by Karen's former allies, voiced opposition, claiming the ordinance would stifle progress and limit economic growth. Their arguments echoed the rhetoric Karen had used, but this time, the community wasn't buying it. At the final town hall meeting before the vote, the room was packed to capacity. People stood shoulder to shoulder, filling every seat and lining the walls. Alex sat near the front, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement as the council prepared to hear arguments for and against the ordinance. When it was Alex's turn to speak, they stood and turned to face the crowd. Their voice was steady, but their words carried the weight of their conviction. "This isn't about stopping progress," Alex began. "It's about making sure that progress doesn't come at the expense of what makes our town special. Farming isn't just a job, it's a way of life. It's what feeds our families, sustains our economy, and connects us to the land. If we don't protect it, we lose more than just farmland. We lose who we are." The crowd erupted into applause, and Alex returned to their seat, their heart pounding. The developers tried to counter, but their arguments fell flat. By the end of the meeting, it was clear where the majority of the town stood. The vote took place a week later, and the ordinance passed by a landslide. Cheers erupted as the results were announced, and Alex felt a wave of relief and pride wash over them. The Farmland Preservation Ordinance was more than just a piece of legislation. It was a promise to future generations that the land would be protected. With the ordinance in place, life on the farm began to settle into a new normal. The eastern field, once a symbol of destruction, had transformed into a lush expanse of green as the crops flourished. The community's support had made all the difference, and Alex was determined to give back in any way they could. One sunny afternoon, Alex hosted a community picnic on the farm. Tables were set up under the shade of the old oak trees, laden with homemade dishes and fresh produce. Families played games in the open fields. Children ran among the rows of crops, and neighbors mingled, their laughter carrying on the breeze. Taylor arrived late, as usual, but with good reason. They carried a framed certificate, a proclamation from the county recognizing Alex and the town for their efforts to protect farmland. "You're a local hero now," Taylor said with a grin, handing over the certificate. "Better get used to it." Alex laughed, shaking their head. "I'm just a farmer who stood their ground." "Sometimes, that's exactly what a hero is," Taylor replied. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Alex stood at the edge of the field, watching the scene unfold. The farm was alive with joy and laughter, a stark contrast to the turmoil of the past months. It was a reminder of how far they'd come, and how much they'd overcome. The fight against Karen had been grueling, but it had also brought the community closer together. It had shown Alex the power of resilience, the importance of standing up for what was right, and the strength that comes from leaning on others when the burden feels too heavy to bear. As the first stars appeared in the twilight sky, Alex took a deep breath, feeling a profound sense of peace. The farm was safe, the community was stronger, and the future looked brighter than ever. It wasn't just a victory, it was a new beginning, and Alex was ready to embrace it, one season at a time.